I'm going to show you how to make a pre-filled registration form that's customized for all of your families. This is a way to make registration much easier for your family because they'll be getting something that already has information in it that they've provided in prior years. But it also makes processing registration much simpler for you because since you're providing the information, you can make sure that it's all formatted the same way, which makes data mining much simpler. And you'll find that by putting in the time now to do this, it's actually going to pay off year after year. So to do this, you're going to need an online registration form that's been created in Google Form. And if you've never used Google Form, it's very easy to learn and it's free. And if you have questions, there's lots of tutorials out there on YouTube. You're also going to need a database that's been created in a spreadsheet. And for the purposes of this tutorial, I am assuming that you have basic spreadsheet skills. So if you never use Excel or Google Sheets, you're probably going to find this to be too complicated. But if you do use Excel and you use Google Sheets, either one, and you have basic skills in them, you're really not going to find this as hard as long as you just follow along. So for this, I've created a sample registration form, a really simple form that has 7 pieces of information in it. And at the end, there's a question asking the person who's looking this over, getting it, to either verify it's all correct or just overwrite what's up above and indicate that they corrected information. So when I get this back, I'm going to know instantly if something has changed, if I didn't have it right in my database. So you need a registration form, and then you also need a database. And here's a very simple database that I'm using for this tutorial. It has, as I said, 7 pieces of information. Now these pieces of information correspond to the questions here. And what I'm planning to do is pre-fill all 7 of these with the information from this database. Now, technically speaking, although you're going to tell in a moment, you're going to say, when you get to this, fill this blank here with what's over here, those column names and that answer don't technically have to match. But you'll find it's much simpler if you make them actually the same, particularly if you have a very long registration form. My real registration form is 35 questions that I pre-fill, and that can get confusing quickly. So if I name my columns exactly the same as I'm putting into my form, it makes life much easier. And when you go to put it in your form, you're going to find a couple of things. So first, you're probably going to want to make these as short as possible because you're going to be typing a bunch of stuff. 2, it cannot contain spaces. So that's very important. Spaces will cause Google Sheets to break the link. So no spaces in it. And 3, you'll find that it's easier if you write them all in capital letters, because when you see the substitution link that it creates, it's pretty long, and the capital letters will make it stand out where you're making a substitution. So again, that's optional, but it's my hint that I would make my column headings on this spreadsheet no spaces, capital letters, and as short as possible. Okay, now this is my database that I'm starting with, and you can see that my database has got information that has spaces in it. And as I just said, any spaces that you have are going to cause the links to break. So you're going to need to deal with any data that has spaces. Tell it how to process that correctly. And if your data has no spaces, you can skip this step entirely. But I have 4 columns, A, C, E, and F, that have spaces. And so I'm going to need to tell it how to deal with that. And the command to do that is %20. So I need to create 4 columns of information to the right here of my spreadsheet to deal with those spaces. You can name them anything you want, but just for this purpose, I'm going to make them match and add a %20 at the end of it. So this way I know exactly what I've substituted, and the %20 is telling me, yep, that's a substitute to take out any of those spaces. Okay. Now we're going to tell it, we're going to write a substitute formula to take the spaces out. So the correct formula for that is equal substitute parenthesis A2, you either click on it or type it, comma, quotation mark, comma, quotation mark, %20, quotation mark, close parenthesis. Now it looks the same, but the formula is up here if you look up at the top, and what it's telling Google Sheets to do, it's saying, go look at A2, pair one name, find any spaces in that data, and when you find those spaces, replace them with %20. And %20 tells the computer to add a space without breaking the link. And we're going to write that same formula for these, all four of these columns. Now, if, I tend to just copy them over. You'll see that when I copy them, it's not referencing the right data. But I find this to be easier. You can retype them if you like, but I just simply go in there and correct it with the column I wanted to substitute. And so now I have substituted column A, column C, column E, and column F with new data that tells it how to deal with spaces. And I'm just going to highlight that and drag it down to populate the whole database. And now my database is ready to use. Now, my next step is to get a pre-filled link. And so in my next column on this spreadsheet, I'm going to just title this column pre-filled link, but you can call it anything you want. Go back to my Google form, click the three buttons up here next to the send, and get pre-filled link. And what that does is it opens up a copy of your form. And you're going to now go in here and tell it where on your database you're going to be substituting information. And this is the area that I said cannot contain spaces, and it's much easier if you write it in capital letters. So I'm going to type mine in here. And those are all of the columns that it's going to go to the database and look for individual information on. And so when the person gets this, they're going to see these 7 filled out, and they'll just simply say, yes, it's correct, or I've corrected it. Now let me also say that you can include information that's the same for everybody too. So it can be a combination of things that are the same for everyone or that are individualized. For example, I have some check boxes that I default to the accept. So everybody that gets a pre-filled registration, it shows accept, and they can do not accept if they want, but they need to change it. So it comes out the same for everybody. So you can do that when you have the form set up exactly the way you want it to set up. Come down to the bottom, click Get Link, and then Copy Link. And now it's on your clipboard. Come back to your database, and in that line, in the pre-filled link column, copy the link. And you can see it's very long. If you look at it, because I wrote them in caps, you can see exactly the areas I'm going to substitute. There's pair 1 name, pair 1 email, pair 2 name, and on. So our next step is we're going to tell it to actually go and get the individual information so that it's different for everybody. And so I'm going to create another column and call it anything you like, but I'm going to call it substitute link. And we're now going to write a substitute statement or substitute formula to tell it to go and substitute this individual information. This is the part that's going to look really scary. And it's not that bad if you just take it one step at a time and follow along. I'm going to show you a really simple substitute formula. Equal, substitute, parenthesis, L2, comma, quotation mark, par1 name, quotation mark, comma, H2, excuse me, 2, close parenthesis. What I've done there is I've told it to go to my pre-filled link in L2, and when it comes to the part that says par1 name, substitute what's over here in H2. And this is something you need to make sure that if you've created those columns to take the spaces out, have it go substitute to that column so that the space doesn't break the link. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to actually nest a bunch of these formulas so that we substitute all 7 pieces of information at one time. And so to do that, every time, for every piece of information that you're going to substitute, you're going to need to have that substitute parenthesis in your formula. So easy way here, I'm just going to highlight it, copy it, and stick in right after the equal sign, paste them in, so I've got 7 of them. 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. For all of these pieces of information, they're going to the same pre-filled link L2, so you don't have to repeat that part. What you're going to change is all of the rest of this. So you're going to tell it which piece of information they're supposed to substitute with which column. So at the end of this formula, just put a comma, and then you start the next piece that you want it to substitute. So in my case, it's quotation mark, par1 email, quotation mark, comma, and that's located in B2, parenthesis, comma, quotation mark, par2 name, quotation mark, comma, which is located in I2 because it's the one that took out the spaces, parenthesis, comma, quotation mark, par2 email, quotation mark, comma, D2 parenthesis, comma, quotation mark, address, quotation mark, comma, J2, the one with no parentheses, no spaces, parenthesis, comma, quotation mark, CH1 name, quotation mark, comma, K2, parenthesis, comma, quotation mark, CH1GR, quotation mark, comma, G2, parenthesis. If you've got a link there, instead of an error message, you did that correctly. If there's an error message, I guarantee there's a typo. And the typos are generally either space that's been put in, which causes it to break, or there's not the equal number of open parentheses as close parentheses, or the wrong number of substitutes. That wasn't too bad, wasn't real easy to do, but if you have a big long registration form like mine that has 35 columns, I guarantee I'm making a typo if I type that whole thing in. So after this video, there is a second video to tell you how to write very long substitute formulas without having to type all that stuff in, and it will really minimize your chances of making a typo, and it will make it much, much, much easier. So if you have a whole big string like that you're trying to substitute, go check out that second video. Now that link right there, that is ready to go. That's your substitute link. you can send that to people and they will have an individualized form. But for me, I don't like sending a long link because you can see that thing is pretty long. So what I do instead is I like to have a register hyperlink. So just a word that says register and it hyperlinks over to the link. And so to do that, what you do is just position your cursor right after the equal sign, but in front of substitute, the first substitute. And you're going to type in hyperlink, open parenthesis. And then come to the back over here, the back at the end of your statement, put a comma, quotation mark, register, or whatever you would like it to say, close parenthesis. And now you'll see it's just a register link. And if you want to see if it works, just click on it, and the link comes up below it live, and you can just click on it and see it filled out all of the information for that particular family. And now all you need to do is just highlight these two columns, drag it down your entire database, and you have individualized register links for everybody that shows just their data. And you are ready to just send out each link to each family. You can do that however you like. The way I do it is I put it in a MailChimp email that's registration for returning families, and the person just comes and finds their family name and clicks on their link, and there's their information all ready to go. And if you keep your database up to date throughout the year, next year all you need to do is just update the grades, just increase them by 1, recopy these links down, and you are set to go and to send it out for next year. So put a little time to it now, and it will pay off for years to come. Hope that was helpful.